It was one of the final steps before the full normalization of ties between Turkey and Israel. Turkey has appointed a new ambassador in Tel Aviv, ending a 4-year absence. The move follows last week's appointment of Israel's new ambassador to Ankara. The return of official envoys caps off a year of rapid improvements in Turkish-Israeli ties after more than a decade of tensions. A career diplomat, Sakir Ozkan Torunlar, was Turkey's former consul general in Jerusalem, having served between 2010 to 2013. His counterpart, Irit Lillian, who has served in several diplomatic posts, is reported to have played a crucial role in normalizing ties between the two countries. Relations took a severe hit 12 years ago after Israel launched a raid on an 8-ship bound for Gaza that left several Turkish citizens dead. Israel's crackdown on Palestinian protesters in 2018 led to the recalling of ambassadors. But earlier this year, Israeli President Isaac Herzog visited Ankara, paving the way for the normalization of diplomatic ties. And for more on the improving relations between Turkey and Israel, I'm joined by Oğuz Çelikkol from Istanbul. He is the former Turkish ambassador to Israel, and Gil Murkiano from Tel Aviv. He is the CEO of the Israeli Institute for Regional and Foreign Politics. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. Oğuz, Turkey and Israel have finally taken the last step to fully restore their ties by mutually appointing ambassadors after an interval of 4 years. How do you think the two countries have come to that point? What were the driving force behind this normalization?
That should be, Turkey and Israel has been working on good relations for a long time. There were bilateral visits from both sides. And now, of course, they decided to take the last step for the normalization of the relations. They decided to upgrade their diplomatic relations to ambassadorial level.
So, Gil, is the normalization of ties between Turkey and Israel are part of the broader Abraham Accords and Turkey's diplomatic outreach to the Gulf countries? I mean, can we say these are going parallel?
They are going parallel, but I would separate the two, because when we speak about Israel-Turkish relations, we are talking about relations that are based on a very long history of and fluctuating history of cooperation and strategic cooperation between the countries. The Abraham Accords, the unique value, is the first time that Israel, the precedent basically of Israel connecting with countries it didn't really have relations beforehand. So if I need to compare it, I might compare it to the restoration of Israeli-Moroccan relations. But I would say that in the process of a regional normalization, what one of my Turkish colleagues defined as the necessity to normalize, we see growing connections between Israel and between the Gulf and the Eastern Mediterranean. So I would say it is part of a more overarching dynamic.
So, Oğuz, what's your opinion on that? Can we say these shifts are all part of a similar process, or they're entirely separate?
No, they are separate because Turkey and Israel in the past has always diplomatic relations. It started in 1947. Yes, of course, it is up and downs happened in Turkish-Israeli relations, especially when the Palestinian issue affected these relations. But there has been always diplomatic relations between Israel and Turkey and Turkey, and that should be, of course, because both Turkey and the Israel has always been important countries in the Eastern Mediterranean, in the Middle East, and they should have normal diplomatic relations.
So, Gil, is normalization of ties sustainable since Israel is headed yet for another general elections? I think this one will be the 5th in 3 years.
And I mean, I think one of the driving forces behind the normalization process of the last year was the Bennett-Lapid government and the fact that it was limited less by obstacles than the previous Netanyahu government. And therefore, it enabled the relations to move forward. I think the good news is that during the last year, we were able, Turkey and Israel, to build a fabric of relations that is based on strong diplomatic emissaries and on a cooperation on different levels that I don't think can be completely cancelled by a new government whatsoever. But the bad news is that, as my colleague, the ambassador, mentioned, there's always a very strong correlation between the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the resilience of Israeli-Turkish relations.
Yes.
And if we are moving into a government, a Netanyahu government or right-wing government, where the friction in Gaza, in Jerusalem, would be raised, and we'll see a renewed escalation in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, then it's obviously going to be a challenge for this process of normalization. We've seen before that the lowest points in the relations were related to the Gaza escalation, were related to 2018, where with the American decision to relocate the American embassy to Jerusalem.
Yes.
So there is a direct correlation, and that's the major challenge, I think, of the normalization process.
So, Oz, would you agree? I mean, could fully restored ties between the two countries help alleviate the Palestinian people's problems? What should be Ankara's roadmap moving forward?
In the past, we, of course, know very well when there are good relations between Turkey and Israel, there's always opportunities for Turkey to help the Palestinians more and influence the talks. At the moment, of course, Israel and Palestinians are not talking, but in the future, we are hoping after the election, there will be talks and the influence of Turkey will increase if Turkey and Israel have normal diplomatic relations.
Sakir, what would be the key area of cooperation between the two countries?
I think the first instinct would be to say, once now that we have ambassadors and the diplomatic relations were upgraded, we have the chance to really restore the strategic dialogue between the countries. Because, you know, I mean, there are so many different interfaces, so many shared interests between the countries and shared areas of focus, just to mention Syria, Lebanon that is collapsing, and its collapse is going to influence Israel and Turkey, Iran, and so on, and of course, the global crisis, the war in Ukraine. But I would actually go against the instinct and say that the most important part is to try and take these point-to-point relations that were developed in the last year and diversify them, giving them a depth through civil society relations, academia, business sectors. Those are the actors that were able to maintain the relations in the very, very Strait or the complicated years of political crisis, and the ability to diversify and to make this process not just between elites, but on a deeper level, maybe even going back to the 90s and strengthening the relations between the societies altogether, is something that is important to the resilience of the relations, especially if we take into consideration the fact that we might experience more political crisis on the Israeli-Palestinian route.
So, speaking of energy, Oz, how would deeper cooperation between the two countries help solve conflicts in the Eastern Mediterranean? I mean, could Tel Aviv play a facilitating role between Turkey and its rivals in the Eastern Mediterranean, like Greece, Egypt?
The energy could be an area of cooperation between Israel and Turkey, because, as you know, of course, in Europe, there is an energy crisis. And, of course, the need for energy, especially natural gas, is increasing in Europe. And hopefully, of course, there will be a cooperation between Israel and Turkey on this area. Economic cooperation is already good, and with the support of the governments, probably it can be much better in the months coming. And I agree, of course, that strategic cooperation, the consultations between Israel and Turkey is important on many subjects in the Middle East and otherwise.
So, Gil, what's the significance of a maritime delimitation deal just signed between Israel and Lebanon, what kind of political ramifications it will have on the region?
Right. I mean, still to be approved by the cabinet, the Israeli cabinet and the Lebanese counterpart. But if we are talking about the signing of an agreement between very unlikely sides, I mean, we are talking about direct enemies, Israel and Hezbollah, when Hezbollah doesn't even recognize the right of Israel to exist. So there's a message here, I think, on the regional level, and I'm being cautious about it, that if Israel and Hezbollah can actually find a way, Israel and Lebanon, with Hezbollah's approval, find a way to solve some of these issues of demarcation and energy for the sake of economic benefits, there might be a broader message to parties that have closer connections, and of course Turkey and other of its Eastern Mediterranean neighbors. That's one thing. I think the second issue, and we really have to speak about it in the broader term, is the Lebanese situation at the moment. Mm-hmm. The political collapse, the context of escalation, the context of a possible wave of refugees, which influence the entire regional framework. I think that the strategic dialogue on these issues is not just bilateral Israeli-Turkish, but it's a chance to incorporate Turkey in a broader regional discussion, where Turkey is an integral part and not excluded from the discussion as we had in the.
So, Oz, how do you read the public reaction in both countries towards this normalization?
It will be very supportive, I hope. It has always been supportive because economic cooperation between Turkey and Israel is important. And also people in Turkey understands that Turkey's ability to help the Palestinians politically and economically, if relations between Turkey and Israel is better, will increase. Mm-hmm. That is very much known by the Turkish public opinion.
All right, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.